My brothers and sisters, it's time we stop confining our faith to a building with 4 walls and a steeple on top. We were never meant to be Sunday-only saints. We weren't called just to occupy pews. We were called to invade darkness with light. If your faith only works when the choir sings and the preacher preaches, then your faith isn't working at all. The world isn't changed by what happens inside the church. The world is transformed when what happens inside flows outside with power, purpose, and passion. Faith was never meant to be hidden. You weren't given the fire of heaven just to keep your hands warm. You were given it to set the atmosphere ablaze, wherever your feet tread, at work, at home, at school. Your faith ought to be undeniable, not obnoxious, not self-righteous, but unmistakable. Faith that makes people wonder, what's different about them? Faith that walks with integrity, speaks with truth, and moves with love. Faith is not something we put on like a suit for Sunday morning and hang back up by Sunday night. Real faith doesn't clock in and out with the church schedule. It breathes through every part of who we are. Every word we speak, every choice we make, every step we take. Faith that only shows up on Sunday is nothing more than performance, a show without substance, a routine without power. It might impress people, but it won't move heaven or change anything on earth. The kind of faith that matters isn't about how loud you can shout during worship, but how deeply you trust when no one's watching. It's not about raising your hands in church, but about keeping your hands clean in business and relationships and in moments of temptation. Sunday faith can look good under stained glass and soft lighting, but weekday faith shows up in traffic, in conflict, in pressure, and in pain. When faith is real, it can't be boxed into a service or controlled by a time slot. It spills over into every interaction and decision. It guides how we treat our co-workers, how we raise our children, how we respond to insult, and how we handle money. It's active when the doors of the church are closed, when the lights are off, and when the crowd is gone. It doesn't need a microphone to speak or a pulpit to stand tall. Faith that lives daily is faith that transforms. It challenges us to forgive even when it hurts, to be honest even when lying would be easier, to serve even when no one notices. That kind of faith is rooted, not rehearsed. It's grown through discipline, not display. It takes shape in silence, in sacrifice, in obedience when there's no applause. And it's exactly that kind of faith that God uses to move mountains and change lives. Too many people treat faith like a visitor instead of a resident. It comes around when they need it, but stays quiet when things get comfortable. Real faith is not seasonal. It doesn't fade with time or shift with culture. It remains firm when the winds blow. It stands tall when the world tries to shake it. It doesn't panic under pressure, but leans on promises that go deeper than emotion or environment. Your faith should go with you to the office, to the kitchen, to the classroom, to the grocery store. It should shape your tone, your thoughts, your treatment of others. When faith becomes part of your lifestyle, it affects how you spend your time, how you set your goals, how you navigate setbacks, and how you measure success. It becomes the lens through which you see the world and respond to it. God didn't call you to weekend religion. He called you to daily transformation. He called you to wake up with purpose and walk through each day with His Spirit guiding you. When your faith lives every day, it becomes less about image and more about impact. People stop seeing just your words and start witnessing your walk. And it's that consistent walk that speaks louder than any sermon ever could. Living faith isn't about perfection. It's about direction. It's choosing every day to walk in God's will, even when you stumble. It's learning to get back up with grace and keep pressing forward. It doesn't just seek comfort, it seeks obedience. It doesn't wait for a worship song to feel God. It carries the presence of God in everyday moments, turning the ordinary into holy ground. Too often, people believe the mission field is somewhere far away on the other side of the world or deep in unreached lands. But the truth is, your mission field begins the moment you step outside your door. The places you go every day, the office, the classroom, the grocery store, even your own home are the very places where God has assigned you to bring light. It's not about waiting for a special assignment. It's about realizing you're already on one. God places people strategically. You're not in your job by accident. You don't live in your neighborhood randomly. The people around you, your coworkers, neighbors, friends, and even your enemies are part of your divine assignment. Every conversation, every interaction, every moment is a chance to reflect the heart of Christ. Your environment is your opportunity to show what heaven looks like on earth. You don't need a pulpit to preach. Your life is the sermon. Your consistency, your kindness, your integrity, your reactions, these things speak louder than any verse you can quote. People watch how you live long before they listen to what you say. In your mission field, it's not about having all the answers. It's about living the truth you claim to believe. That truth will speak even when your mouth stays silent. There are people you encounter every day who may never walk into a church, but they see you, they hear you, they notice how you treat others. They remember if you listen or ignore, if you help or walk away. In your environment, faith is on display, whether you realize it or not. You may be the only Bible someone ever reads, the only glimpse of Jesus someone ever sees, and that's not something to take lightly. Sometimes we wait for the perfect moment to share our faith, but mission fields are not made of perfect moments, they're made of everyday ones. A kind word during someone's rough day, a helping hand when no one else offers, a prayer whispered in a hallway, all these are seeds planted in the soil of your environment. And over time, those seeds grow. They create openings for deeper conversations and spiritual transformation. The mission doesn't require a passport, it requires perspective. When you begin to see your daily surroundings as sacred territory, everything changes. That classroom becomes a sanctuary. That break room becomes a battleground for grace. That dinner table becomes a place of ministry. When you understand that you've been sent, you stop waiting to be used and start walking with purpose. You are the salt of the earth and the light of the world, and salt only makes a difference when it touches something, and light only matters when it enters the dark. Your environment is waiting for that salt and light to show up. It's waiting for someone to lead by example, to love without conditions, to serve without applause, and to stay faithful even when it's hard. That's what living the mission looks like. It's not about doing something big for God somewhere else. It's about being faithful with what's right in front of you. You don't have to quit your job to be used by God. You just have to show up with a kingdom mindset. You don't have to preach a sermon to change a life. You just have to live in such a way that people see something different in you. And your environment becomes the ground where God works through you. God has never been limited by human credentials. He doesn't check resumes before he calls someone. He looks for hearts that are open, surrendered, and ready. While the world celebrates talent, God honors obedience. He's not looking for the perfect. He's looking for the willing. Some of the greatest moves of God have come through people who didn't seem qualified by human standards, but were completely available to him. Throughout Scripture, God consistently chose the unexpected. Moses had a speech problem. David was a shepherd boy. Esther was an orphan. Peter was impulsive. Paul had a past filled with persecution. Yet God used each one because they said yes. They didn't have it all together, but they had the courage to trust him anyway. That yes was more powerful than any degree or background. God isn't waiting for you to become something great before he uses you. He often uses what's broken to display his power. If you're waiting until you feel ready, you'll miss the assignment. God equips those he calls. He supplies strength in the midst of weakness and wisdom in the middle of uncertainty. All he needs is a vessel willing to move when he says move and speak when he says speak. Being willing means stepping forward when you feel afraid. It means saying yes even when you don't have the full plan. It means trusting that God will fill in the gaps if you're bold enough to show up. Willingness isn't about confidence in yourself, it's about confidence in the one who called you. God has a track record of doing the impossible with people who simply say, "Here I am." We live in a culture that tells us we need more degrees, more training, more experience before we qualify. But heaven doesn't operate on those terms. Heaven looks for the person who will obey without needing recognition. God can do more through one willing heart than through 100 who are waiting for the right moment. He's not looking for stars. He's looking for servants. When you offer your life to God without holding back, you give him room to work beyond your ability. That's where miracles happen, in the space where you step out in faith and let him take over. The story isn't about how ready you are, but about how willing you are to trust him. God doesn't call the equipped. He equips the called. And the call begins with a simple yes. There will always be reasons to feel unqualified. Inadequacy whispers lies, fear casts shadows, and doubt tries to choke your faith. But your willingness is the weapon that pushes back. It says, I don't feel enough, but I believe God is. It turns weakness into strength and impossibility into testimony. The moment you stop measuring yourself and start trusting God, he begins writing a new story through you. You don't need to be extraordinary to do extraordinary things. God's glory shines brightest through surrendered vessels. When he finds someone who will go where others won't and do what others avoid, he pours out favor and grace. Willingness is the key that unlocks divine assignments. It doesn't shout, it doesn't boast, it simply responds, ready to be used no matter the cost. Faith doesn't show its strength when everything is easy. It shows its power when everything is hard. Anyone can believe when the sun is shining and the doors are opening. But real faith is revealed in the storm. When the pressure rises and the options are few, that's when faith speaks loudest. It's not proven in the comfort of routine, but in the chaos of testing. That's where its roots grow deeper and its fruit becomes visible. Comfort can disguise weakness. It can lull us into thinking we're strong because we haven't yet been stretched. But when pressure hits, when life breaks, when people leave, when answers don't come, faith gets exposed for what it really is. It's either a shallow feeling or a solid foundation. The test doesn't create faith, it reveals it. It pulls back the curtain on what's really inside. True faith doesn't panic under pressure. It presses forward. It doesn't collapse when things don't go as planned. It leans harder on God. When you can't trace his hand, you trust his heart. That's where faith proves itself, not by escaping the fire, but by standing in it, knowing that God is still good, still present, still working, even when everything looks broken. Pressure purifies. Just like heat refines gold, trials refine faith. They burn away pride, selfishness, and spiritual laziness. What's left is something stronger, purer, and more real. The weight you carry forces you to stop relying on yourself and depend fully on God. That's when faith matures, from shallow belief to unshakable trust, from borrowed confidence to personal conviction. God allows pressure not to break us, but to build us. It's in those moments of crushing that we're shaped for greater purpose. Faith proven in pressure becomes unmovable. It stops being conditional. It no longer depends on feelings or circumstances. It becomes anchored in who God is, not just in what he does. It learns to say even if instead of only if. The enemy hopes pressure will silence your praise and steal your hope. But pressure is where your testimony is formed. It's where your story gains power. When you stand firm under stress, others see it. They witness something supernatural, something not rooted in human strength. And in that moment, your faith becomes a witness that speaks louder than words. When comfort is stripped away and you still choose to believe, that's when heaven moves. That kind of faith touches God's heart. It shows that you trust him, not because of what he gives, but because of who he is. It honors him in the dark, and that kind of honor doesn't go unnoticed. He draws near to those who hold on when everything tells them to let go. Pressure is not the end of your faith. It's the proving ground. It's where the promises of God are tested in the soil of your struggle. And every time you choose to keep believing, keep hoping, keep walking, your faith grows stronger. It stops being theory and becomes reality. That's what makes faith real. Not that it works in comfort, but that it endures in pressure. Church is not just a place you go, it's who you are. The building may hold the services, but the people carry the presence. Too many settle for attending church without becoming the church. They think showing up once a week checks the box. But the true power of faith isn't in where you sit on Sunday. It's in how you live on Monday. Being the church means carrying God's heart into every space you enter, not just into a sanctuary. It's easy to blend in during worship, to nod during sermons and still leave unchanged. But God never called us to be spectators. He called us to be participants. You are meant to reflect heaven in your words, actions, and decisions, not just in church clothes, but in everyday life. Church doesn't end when the service is over. It begins when you walk out the door. Being the church means loving the unlovable, forgiving the undeserving, and serving without seeking recognition. It's not about titles or positions, it's about function. You're not called to warm a pew, you're called to impact a broken world. The church is not meant to be a retreat center for the perfect, but a training ground for the willing. You don't attend just to receive, you're meant to be equipped to give. God's presence isn't confined to a stage or a pulpit. His Spirit dwells in you. That means everywhere you go becomes holy ground. Whether you're in a boardroom or a break room, you carry the influence of heaven. When you live like that, people don't just hear about Jesus, they experience him through your compassion, your patience, your integrity, and your strength under pressure. Many want the benefits of belonging to the church without accepting the responsibility of being the church. But the true mark of a believer isn't found in how many services they attend. It's in how much their life mirrors Christ. Being the church means standing for truth, walking in humility, and sacrificing personal comfort for kingdom impact. It means you don't just sit in faith, you walk in it. The world isn't looking for another building. It's looking for people who live what they preach. When you are the church, your home becomes a place of peace. Your job becomes a mission field, and your community becomes your calling. You're not just called to sit and listen, you're called to act and lead. Your lifestyle becomes your message, and your presence carries power. You don't need a microphone to be the church. You need boldness in your witness, love in your dealings, and consistency in your walk. Being the church means choosing to be set apart, not in arrogance, but in holiness. It's about staying rooted in truth while extending grace to those around you. It's about being a living example of hope, mercy, and redemption wherever life takes you. Real transformation doesn't happen just because you entered a church building. It happens when the church rises within you, when your faith comes alive in everyday choices, when you reflect the character of Christ beyond the walls, then you truly step into your purpose. You become a vessel, not just a visitor, a light in the dark, a voice of truth, and a representative of God's kingdom in real time.